Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Oh goodness, there's so many things to talk about. And today was one of those days that I was struggling on trying to figure out what to talk about. Not because there's nothing to talk about, but because there's so much to talk about. And the thing that's kind of jumped out at me that I thought we would discuss again, because this is one of those reoccurring themes that I think we should discuss. And that's the economy, inflation specifically, because it's happening. It's happening right now. Everything is inflating, commodity prices, everything. You guys comment all the time. Every time I mention it, I get comment after comment talking about how things have just gone up in your area, and that's just everywhere. Everywhere. The only thing that hasn't gone up is your pay. That's about the only thing that probably hasn't gone up in the last year and a half in your life. And the reality is it's probably not going away, because guess what? Our glorious government has this wonderful idea of, well, let's just spend some more money. And that's what they're going to do. And we're going to talk about that today. And hopefully, for those of you that might still be on the fence of whether or not inflation is really going to happen, and some of you might still think that, oh, our economy is very strong and it's going to do well, hopefully you'll start to kind of realize that this is something that you also need to be preparing for, because I think eventually the inevitable is going to happen. Before I get started, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. I looked at the numbers on my account here, and about half of the viewers are not subscribed. So that half of you that is not subscribed, go ahead and click that subscribe button and click the little bell icon off to the side of it, and that way you will be updated. You should, most of the time. I know that it doesn't always work, but most of the time you'll receive some kind of notification to let you know that I've posted a new video, so you can stay on top of what we're doing here on the channel. I'd sure appreciate that. Man, spending. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great if you could just spend money? Not how much you have, not how much you make, but spend as much as you want. And that's what our government is doing. In case you haven't been keeping on top of it, our president, Biden, his spending plan, he just keeps coming out with new stuff. Well, we need to spend money on this. We need to spend money on this infrastructure plan, even though it actually doesn't go to infrastructure, because now everything's infrastructure. You know, daycare is infrastructure, and healthcare is infrastructure, and all this other stuff, and giving money to labor unions, because that's the big bulk of his infrastructure plan, is going to labor unions, and encouraging people to be part of labor unions. And then there's his climate and environmental plan, which is basically a Green New Deal light. In fact, a lot of people in Congress, specifically Democrats, have said that it's not enough. They want him to spend more money. It's just on and on. More and more his social programs, his social justice programs. Officially, we are up to $6 trillion in proposed spending. $6 trillion. Now, put that into perspective. Last year, our government spent more money than it ever had in its entire history, mostly because of the health crisis. You know, the stimulus packages and all that kind of stuff, handing out free money last year. And we spent about $6.5 trillion for the entire federal government. Budget, everything, all the departments. We spent $6.5 trillion. Well, as of yet, officially, Biden is proposing at least an additional $6 trillion of spending, new spending. And some estimates, looking at some of the plans that the numbers haven't come out yet, are saying that it could be as high as $10 trillion. $6 to $10 trillion in spending. On top of the spending, we're going to increase taxes too. That's right, we're going to increase taxes at the numbers of $2.3 trillion. Now, I know some of you might say, well, that's fine, because that's not going to affect me. Most of the increase is going to be for big companies and wealthy people and they got to pay their fair share. Folks, and don't listen to the press secretary woman say, oh, well, if companies have to pay more in taxes, that doesn't mean that you're going to have to pay more for their products. I don't know what kind of economics that these people are trying to spew. I've owned businesses in the past, and I've managed businesses. And if a product or just my overall overhead of my business, if it increases, then it's natural to increase the cost of your, what you're charging for your goods or your services. Because if you're continually increasing the cost of doing business on my end as the business owner, and I don't increase how much money I'm taking in, eventually I'm not going to be making as much money, and I'm going to be making no money or very little money if it just keeps happening. So of course they're going to pass on those extra fees to other people. This is just the cost of doing business. This is how it works. So your gallon of milk's going to go up in price. Well, your gallon of milk is going to go up in price anyways, because it already has. I was looking the other day. We buy raw milk from a local person has a cow. So I haven't bought milk in a store in a long time, and just happened to look the other day and couldn't believe it was like almost $4.50 for a gallon of milk. My goodness, $4.50 for a gallon of milk. I mean, we only pay $2 for a gallon of raw milk, and that's way, way better than anything you get in the store. Everything's going up in price because of inflation, and then it's going to start going up in price because the companies are going to pay more in taxes. So anyways, $6 trillion. $6 trillion at least in spending. And of course, most of the spending is just ridiculous spending. And we all know that. I don't even want to go into the details of what we're spending $6 trillion on. Fact is we're spending it. It's money we don't have. We're talking about a GDP to debt ratio of already in the 135 to 140%, which is just astronomical. We've never had numbers like that in this nation's history. Even during, the Great Depression and the recession of 2008, these numbers we've never seen before. And we're starting to get into the area that some of these numbers that we're looking at of inflation and GDP and spending and stuff, if you're looking at percentages and stuff, we're starting to get into the area of other nations that did go through hyperinflation because their currency collapsed and their economy collapsed. And there's certainly a lot of people out there that are far more expert than I that are sounding the warning siren saying, hey, we can't keep doing this. We can't just keep spending money like this. If we do, we're going to go broke. We're going to go under. We're going to hyperinflate our dollar. We're going to crash our economy. I mean, even mainstream news sources are now are talking about, this $6 trillion spending package, or all the packages together. Can our economy even handle this? Can our currency handle it? Are we going to just continue causing more and more inflation? And when we've got the Federal Reserve flat out admitting that they're causing inflation. They're admitting that they're going to keep the interest rates near zero, and to heck with the inflation because we know it's happening. And they say, well, we're going to try to keep the inflation low, not let it get too hot, not let it get too big. Okay, if it starts to get too much out of control, then we'll try to rein it in. And so they're doing it on that end with the inflation. We've got the administration spending money like mad crazy people. I mean, the amounts of money that than anyone, there's no one that can quite wrap their head around really what $6 trillion is. And it's funny because just, 10 years ago or so, or less than 10 years ago, I believe it was less than 10 years ago, or right around that, people were losing their minds because of Obama's spending package, his stimulus package of less than $1 trillion, 900 and some odd billion dollars. And people were going crazy then over that amount. And now we're at 6 trillion, maybe $10 trillion. We're talking about trillions like we used to talk about millions and even billions, like it's nothing. It's all going to catch up with us, folks. I mean, no nation can continue doing this. And I know that there are some in the Keynesian economics that feel that, well, if we own and control our currency and the ability to print and the ability to create more, then it doesn't matter. We can just keep creating and creating and creating, it's okay. But here's the thing. Other nations are watching this. And the only reason, really, that our currency has any value at all is the value that the global market gives it. That they see that it has some value to it. Other than that, there's really nothing that gives it value. And that's starting to drop. We're starting to see signs internationally that other countries don't have quite the faith in our currencies they once did. In fact, it was some African country, which was a small country, and I get it, but I believe it was like Nigeria or something, has announced that they're no longer accepting, or they're no longer doing any business with the US dollar. They're not accepting it anymore. We've got Iran trying to circumvent the global reserve currency, which is the US dollar, by using cryptocurrency. We've got China doing its dealings with its currency and its cryptocurrency. So at some point, the world's going to say, you know what, this country is spending like absolute crazy people, and we don't want to have any part of their dollar. And when and if that happens, our dollar could become worthless in a matter of days, at most weeks. It could start dropping. And that's a big problem for us. We're spending all this money, and it's not coming to you. I'm not getting any of it. Who's getting all this money? Well, of course, it's big companies. It's big companies and politicians. I mean, it doesn't take too much to look at, first quarter numbers coming out. We've got Amazon tripling their income, their profits. We've got, Apple and Facebook making lots of money. We've got, all the Twitter, they're making more money than they've ever made before. Everyone, all these big tech companies, all these big oligarch companies, they're making lots of money. Of course, all the politicians, they go in worth a little bit of money and they come out worth tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. This is where all the money's going. And they're taking it from us, not just in taxes. And that's what a lot of people that don't get it. They're like, oh, well, I don't make a whole lot of money, so it didn't really affect my taxes too much. No, it does, because inflation is a tax. When your money doesn't buy as much as it used to, it's a tax, folks. When you go to the gas station and now it takes $3 to buy a gallon, or $4 to buy a gallon, or $5 to buy a gallon, that gallon of milk goes from $4 and $5 and $6 and $7 a gallon. That loaf of bread is $2, $3, $4, $5 a loaf, or even more. That's a tax. That's a tax on you, because you're paying more money for something that has this exact same value that it once did. The value of that gallon of gasoline, or loaf of bread, or 2x4, or a gallon of milk hasn't changed. It's still worth the same thing it was a year or 2 or 3 ago. It's the currency that you're using is worth less. And that means that people are making more money off of you. You're not getting it. I'm not getting it. Someone else is. This inflation thing is very serious. There's a lot of things happening. It's very overwhelming what's happening. I was talking to my wife today, and I said, I know this is what I'm about to say to you, because this is what I told her, sounds very extreme, and that I'm over-exaggerating things. And yes, in a way that I am, but I do believe it's comparable. If you look at the rate, the intensity of change, the rate and the intensity of change in this nation in the past 3 months' time, that how fast things are happening, how fast it's just constantly, now they're wanting to ban certain kinds of cigarettes and cigars, and it's crazy the amount of stuff that's coming out, all this news speak, meaning that this is happening, but they're saying that something else is happening. Oh no, we're not going to take away your gun rights. Oh, and the amendments, those bills of rights, the rights, those inalienable rights, well, they're not actually inalienable anymore. They're not They're not, you know, indefinite. They're not permanent, and they're not, you know, it's not what you think, right? You know, inalienable doesn't mean what you think. A right doesn't mean what you think. Shall not be infringed, that doesn't mean what you think. Anyways, this stuff that's happening, this rate and the intensity of change is very similar in a lot of ways to revolutions of the past, and not the good kind. I'm talking like the communist revolution of Russia and the communist revolution in China, and the revolution, even though it's not called that, but of Hitler coming to power in Germany and taking over. In fact, if you look at some of those, the transition time from when things were still considered pretty normal to where things got really bad, it took even longer in some instances than what it's taken so far for things to change. Now, I'll give you that, of course, that we don't see the violence that was seen in those revolutions where they were pulling out, you know, people in the streets and just murdering them in the streets. I get that, but I'm talking about the actual political and ideological changes that's happening. You know, if you go back and you look at some of the communist, the Marxist, the Leninist plans that was put down many years ago, decades ago, for here in the United States, of how to take over the United States, they would be impressed, because we're doing a lot better than what they even wanted us to do at converting and becoming a Marxist nation. And so this change, it's very rapid. And the change in the economy, the change with the money, the change with the spending, and the rapid increase of taxation, and the way that they're spending it, and amazingly, so many of the population is just lapping it up. You know, it's like, oh, whatever he wants to do, he's not the orange man that makes bad tweets that hurts my feelings, so he can do anything. You know, that's basically what's going on. So folks, telling you, if you've got money invested wherever it's invested, I'm not the man to tell you how to fix it and how to, you know, secure it, but you should look into it and make sure you can get it as secure as possible in things that you hold, because possession, that's everything. If you don't have it in your hand, if you can't physically possess whatever you're investing in the end, you don't really own it at all. So that's the only advice you're going to get from me on that subject. But I'm telling you folks, we keep spending this kind of money, and then I haven't even talked about the amount of people coming into this nation that's illegal. You know, they apprehended 172,000 last month. That's the ones that they apprehended. That's 2 million a year if you spread that out over 12 months. And that's the ones they apprehended. That's not the ones that got away. And of course, we're going to be trying to give them all kinds of free stuff too. You know, health care and education and daycare and child care and every kind of care you can think of. All that happening, giving out free money to everybody else, spending. House of cards like that can't last forever. It just can't. It's not possible. I mean, at some point, it's going to come crashing down. And folks, you better be ready for that. Because when this dollar comes crashing down, when the economy comes crashing down, when the dollar hyperinflates, you think what you've seen and heard about in Venezuela is bad? You ain't seen nothing yet, because we're the biggest. We're the biggest, the big global reserve currency, the big boys. And so when our dollar hyperinflates and crashes, the ripples are going to be much more catastrophic, and they're going to be all over the planet, okay? So you better get ready for this. I'm at the point now, I think it's being done on purpose. That's just my little 2 cents. I think they're doing it because they know it's crashing, so let's spend every dime we can before it finally goes under. And that's what they're doing. All right, folks. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Hey, Prepared Homesteaders, as you are stocking up on your rice, beans, canned food, dry foods that you certainly need to be stocking up on because of the great reset, new world order that is upon us, I want you to consider stocking up on a few other items that really diversify your food preps. This is some stuff from Ready Hour Food that is amazing freeze-dried food, really good quality stuff, tastes amazing. It comes in the Mylar bags and the tin cans. You can buy a whole bucket of it over on preparedness.com. That's preparedness.com. If you buy a 4-week supply bucket, you get $100 off. And man, you cannot go wrong with this stuff. It's not the only thing I would be prepping up, but it certainly is good to add it to your preps to give you all the different options, flavor options, not just beans and rice and some canned food. This stuff lasts 25 to 30 year shelf life, and it's real easy to cook it with just some hot boiling water, and you'll really enjoy the flavor. It's very high quality stuff, especially for what you pay for. But go over to preparewithtravis.com and pick you up some Ready Hour food to prepare for what is coming.